The bustling city market was alive with color and noise. Merchants shouted over each other, bargaining with customers, while the scent of spices hung in the air. In the middle of the crowd, a tall man named Rafe scanned the scene like a predator, his eyes locked on a woman walking alone, dressed in a simple coat, her hair tied back, her expression calm. She looked ordinary, too ordinary. Her steps were measured, her focus on a small bag of groceries she carried. To Rafe, she was an easy mark. No guards, no entourage, no visible wealth, just a solitary woman in the wrong part of town. He trailed her quietly, slipping through the crowd with practiced ease. His fingers flexed in anticipation. All he needed was a dark alley and a few seconds of surprise. The woman stopped at a quiet corner to adjust the strap of her bag. Rafe smirked. Perfect. He stepped closer, his hand ready to snatch the bag, or worse if she resisted. But before he could even blink, the woman moved. 1 second she was facing away, the next she spun, her hand gripping his wrist with crushing force. Rafe gasped, feeling his bones grind. Her eyes locked on his, cold, steady, and terrifying. "You've made a mistake," she said, her voice low and controlled. Rafe tried to yank his arm free, but her grip tightened. She leaned in just enough for him to hear her whisper, "You picked the wrong target. I'm Commander Vale." The name hit him like a punch. Stories of her ruthless precision and unbroken record in battle were whispered among criminals like ghost stories. And now, she had him. The market noise faded. All Rafe could hear was his own heartbeat, and the sound of his fear. Rafe's mind raced. Commander Vale. The name wasn't just a warning, it was a legend. She was the military's most feared tactician, the commander who led missions no one else dared to take. Soldiers spoke of her with reverence, criminals spoke of her with dread. And here she was, holding his wrist like a vice. I don't know who you—" Rafe stammered, trying to twist free. "Don't lie to me," she cut in sharply. Her eyes scanned him, taking in every detail, the cheap leather jacket, the concealed blade at his hip, the faint smell of gunpowder. Petty thief, armed, likely desperate. "Am I wrong?" Rafe swallowed hard. You're hurting me." "That's the point," she replied coldly. With a quick motion, she spun him around, pressing him face first against the rough brick wall of the alley. Her movements were fluid, calculated, every step designed to keep control. The crowd outside the alley kept moving, unaware of what was unfolding in the shadows. Vale leaned close to his ear. "You thought you were hunting prey, but you've wandered into the lion's den." "I wasn't going to hurt you," Rafe blurted. She chuckled dryly. "That's not what your knife says." In one swift move, she disarmed him, the blade clattering to the ground. Her hands never trembled, her stance never faltered. Then she did something unexpected. She released him, but didn't step back. "You have one chance to explain why you're following me." Rafe's instinct was to run, but something in her eyes froze him in place. This wasn't just about a failed robbery. She knew something. About him, about the people he worked for. And suddenly, Rafe realized, she wasn't here by accident. Rafe's throat tightened. "I wasn't following you," he muttered, but even he knew the lie was pointless. Commander Vale's gaze didn't waver. "Don't insult my intelligence. You've been trailing me since the West Gate. You keep to the shadows, avoid eye contact, and your breathing changes when you're within striking distance." She tilted her head slightly. "That's the behavior of someone either desperate or working for someone else." Rafe's lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't dare speak. Vale smirked, but there was no humor in it. "Good. Silence means I'm close." She stepped back, just enough to give him space, but not enough for him to think he could flee. "So, who sent you? Was it Marlowe? Or has the syndicate gotten bold enough to try me in broad daylight?" At the mention of the syndicate, Rafe's eyes flickered, barely, but enough for her to see. "That's what I thought," she said, her tone like steel. "I've been waiting for one of you to bite. Looks like you're it." A sudden realization hit Rafe like a punch to the gut. He hadn't stumbled upon some random woman. She had let herself be seen. She had wanted him to follow. You used me," he breathed. Vale leaned in, her voice low and razor-sharp. "Correction, I baited you. And now you're going to take me straight to your handler. Because if you don't—" Her fingers brushed the hilt of a concealed sidearm, just enough for him to notice. "You won't live long enough to regret it." For the first time in years, Rafe felt truly trapped, not by walls or chains, but by a mind far sharper than his own. And she was already 3 steps ahead. Rafe's pulse pounded in his ears as they moved through the maze of narrow streets. The market's chatter was gone now, replaced by the echo of their footsteps. Commander Vale followed close behind, never touching him, yet he felt her presence like a shadow pressing against his back. "I'm telling you, "They'll kill me if they see me with you," Rafe muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "They'll kill you faster if you don't lead me there," Vale replied, her voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced any protest. He cursed under his breath, taking a sharp turn into a side street littered with broken crates and the stench of rotting fruit. "Fine, but you walk in there, you're signing your own death warrant." Vale didn't slow. "Let me worry about my own life." Rafe led her toward the abandoned tram station, a forgotten relic from decades past. Its once grand arches were now cracked and crumbling, its windows boarded up. A single flickering bulb above the entrance cast an eerie glow. "This is it," he said, stopping short. "Inside's where they do their business. I don't go further than this." Vale stepped forward, scanning the shadows. Her hand rested lightly on her sidearm, but her movements were unhurried. "You've already gone further than you planned. Keep walking." Rafe hesitated. The tram station wasn't just a hideout, it was a trap in itself. Inside were syndicate enforcers, men who wouldn't hesitate to gut him for bringing her here. But the alternative, defying Commander Vale, felt even more dangerous. With a reluctant breath, he pushed open the heavy door. The hinges groaned. Somewhere in the darkness beyond, a voice called out, "Who's there?" Vale's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. "It's showtime," she whispered. The air inside the tram station was thick with damp and dust, carrying the faint tang of oil and rusted steel. Broken benches lined the walls, and the once grand ticket counter had been turned into a barricade of crates and metal sheets. Dim lanterns flickered, throwing shifting shadows across the room. 3 men emerged from the gloom, all armed. Their leader, a broad-shouldered brute with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "Rafe?" His voice dripped suspicion. "You were told to watch her, not bring her here." Rafe's throat went dry. Things changed. Vale stepped into the weak light, her eyes scanning every angle, every exit. "You must be Kel, Syndicate's local boss." Kel's brows furrowed. "And you are?" "Your worst mistake," she replied, her tone like ice. The men chuckled, but it was a short, uneasy sound. Something in the way she carried herself, her upright stance, the measured cadence of her words, pricked at their instincts. "I've heard of you," Kel said slowly. "Commander Vale, war hero, supposed to be untouchable. What's a decorated soldier doing here?" "Cleaning up," she said simply. "Your syndicate has been bleeding this city dry. Today that ends." Kel smirked. "You came alone?" Vale's lips curved faintly. "That's what you think." Before the men could react, a faint click echoed through the station. Hidden in the shadows above, 2 red laser dots danced across their chests. Kel's smirk faded. "You're surrounded," Vale said. "Your choice, drop the weapons and live, or fight and end up as names on my report." The tension crackled like a live wire. Rafe glanced between them, realizing too late. This wasn't a gamble for her. This was a hunt, and they were already in her snare. Kel's jaw tightened as the red dots wavered across his chest. The 2 men flanking him exchanged uneasy glances. The faint shuffle of movement in the rafters above confirmed what they feared. Vale wasn't bluffing. "Snipers?" Kel asked, his tone forced calm. Vale didn't answer. She just stared, the silence more dangerous than any threat. One of Kel's men swallowed hard. "Boss, maybe we should—" "Shut it," Kel snapped. His gaze darted toward Rafe. "You brought her here. You working for her now?" Rafe lifted his hands defensively. "I didn't have a choice." Vale took a step closer, her boots echoing on the cracked tile. "You're right, Rafe. You didn't. Because I saw you coming the moment you stepped into the market. I knew you'd lead me here." Kel's lip curled. "So you used him as bait?" "I use what's available," she replied coldly, "including the cracks in your operation. And believe me, I've found more than one." The sound of metal clattering broke the tension. One of Kel's men dropped his gun. The other hesitated, then followed suit. "Kel," Vale said, her voice low but commanding. "Last chance. Stand down." For a long moment, Kel said nothing. His eyes flicked toward the door behind him, the way deeper into the station, where Vale knew the syndicate stored weapons, cash, and intel. Then, slowly, he smirked. "You think you've cornered me, but you've only walked into my lair." He whistled sharply. From the shadows behind the barricade, more figures emerged, 6 armed enforcers, their guns already raised. The red dots from above shifted in response, but Vale didn't flinch. She actually smiled. The air in the tram station grew heavier, the tension wound tight enough to snap. Vale's smile didn't fade as the syndicate enforcers fanned out, forming a half-circle. The metallic clicks of their weapons echoed off the cracked walls. "Snipers," Vale said evenly, her voice carrying up into the rafters. "On my mark." Kell barked a laugh. You fire one shot, Commander, and this room becomes your grave. Vale tilted her head. That's where you're wrong. This room is already yours. Kell's eyes narrowed in confusion. Then the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the station, broken only by the faint gleam of lanterns tumbling to the floor. Before anyone could adjust, the air exploded with movement. Red laser dots zipped across the black, followed by muffled thwip-thwip sounds, silenced shots dropping 2 men before they could scream. Rafe dove behind a broken bench, his heart slamming in his chest. He couldn't see Vale, but he heard her, calm, precise commands cutting through the chaos. Left flank, down. 2 o'clock, clear. Gunfire erupted, the flash of muzzle light briefly illuminating figures moving like shadows. Vale's team, emerging from hidden positions in the rafters and old maintenance tunnels. Kell roared, firing blindly. Find her. But Vale was already moving, slipping through the dark like water. One by one her enemies fell, not dead but incapacitated with surgical precision. She never wasted a shot. In less than a minute, the room fell silent again, save for the groans of the wounded. The lights flickered back to life, revealing Kell on his knees, his gun kicked far out of reach. Vale stood over him, weapon steady, eyes unblinking. This, she said coldly, is what happens when you mistake me for an easy target. Kell spat blood, glaring up at her. You think this is over? Vale's gaze hardened. Oh, Kell, this is just the beginning. Kell's wrists were bound with military-grade restraints, the kind that bit into the skin if you struggled. Vale stood a few feet away, arms crossed, her team silently sweeping the station for hidden threats. You've been bleeding this city dry for years, she said, her tone flat. Extortion, smuggling, arms trafficking. I want names. Every syndicate leader you report to. Kell smirked through the blood on his lip. You think I'm scared of you? The syndicate has eyes everywhere. You kill me, someone worse takes my place. Vale didn't blink. I'm not here to kill you, Kell. I'm here to make you disappear. That made his smirk falter. Disappear? Black sight, she said simply. No trial, no paper trail. You'll vanish so completely your own shadow won't know where you went. The room felt colder. Rafe shifted uncomfortably in the corner, realizing that whatever line existed between justice and vengeance, Vale had walked right past it. Kell chuckled nervously. You can't. I can, she interrupted, stepping closer. And I will. Unless you talk. For the first time, Kell hesitated. The swagger in his posture faltered, replaced by a calculating stillness. He glanced at Rafe, then back to Vale. All right, maybe we can deal. Vale leaned in, her eyes narrowing. You're not in a position to deal. You're in a position to beg. Kell swallowed hard. Fine, but you'll need more than just me to bring them down. That's why you're going to give me everything, she said. Locations, contacts, supply routes, and if I even think you're lying. She let the sentence hang in the air, her silence more menacing than any threat. Somewhere deep in the station, footsteps echoed, unfamiliar ones. Vale's head snapped toward the sound. Her voice dropped to a whisper. We're not alone. The faint echo of boots on concrete grew louder, steady and purposeful. Vale raised her hand, signaling her team to hold position. The air felt charged, like the moments before a storm. From the far end of the tram station, a group emerged. 6 men in black tactical gear, their faces hidden behind visors. They moved with the precision of trained soldiers. Rafe's stomach dropped. Those aren't syndicate, he whispered. Vale's eyes narrowed. No, they're worse. The lead figure stepped forward, his voice deep and cold. Commander Vale, you have something that belongs to us. His gaze shifted to Kell. Kell's eyes went wide. No, you're not supposed to be here. Shut him up, the leader ordered. 2 of the black-clad men advanced, but Vale was already moving, placing herself between them and her prisoner. Her weapon stayed low, but her stance screamed readiness. You're not walking out with him, Vale said. The leader's visor tilted slightly. You're outnumbered. Vale's lips twitched in a faint, almost amused smile. You can't outnumber me in my own trap. At her signal, her team shifted position, rifles trained on the newcomers from elevated angles. Red laser dots danced across the intruder's armor. The leader didn't flinch. Do you even know who we are? I know enough, Vale said evenly, and I know you're trespassing in my operation. A tense silence followed. Then, without warning, one of the black-clad men opened fire. The station erupted into chaos. Gunfire, shouts, and the sharp sting of ricocheting rounds. Rafe dove for cover again, while Kell struggled against his restraints, shouting incoherently. Vale was already in motion, her voice cutting through the noise. Lock it down! No one leaves. And in that instant, the tram station became a war zone. Bullets tore through the air, pinging off rusted steel beams and splintering the old wooden benches. The tram station, once silent but tense, now roared with the sound of battle. Vale moved like a phantom, low, fast, precise. She slid behind a concrete pillar, firing 2 controlled bursts that dropped one of the black-clad men instantly. Her team mirrored her efficiency, using the elevated positions to rain suppressive fire on the intruders. Rafe crouched in the corner, hands over his head. Every nerve screamed at him to run, but one glance at Vale told him there was nowhere to go she didn't control. The leader of the black-clad unit barked orders, his men fanning out, trying to flank Vale's team. 2 advanced along the left wall, but Vale anticipated the move. She vaulted the barricade of crates, landing between them with a precision kick that knocked one man's rifle from his hands. A swift elbow strike sent the second crumpling to the ground. Kell, still restrained, shouted over the chaos. "You idiots don't understand! If they're here, it means—" A gunshot cracked, silencing him mid-sentence. One of the intruders had tried to take him out, but the bullet struck the wall inches from his head. Vale's sharpshooter had neutralized the shooter before the kill could land. Vale didn't miss a beat. "Keep Kell alive," she barked. The leader's visor caught the flicker of the overhead light as he stepped forward. He held his weapon steady, but didn't fire. "Commander Vale." "You don't want this fight." She reloaded with practiced speed. "I already have it." In the distance, the rumble of approaching engines echoed faintly through the tunnels. Reinforcements, someone's, but whose? Vale's jaw tightened. This fight was about to get a whole lot bigger. The low rumble in the tunnels grew into a deafening roar. Headlights pierced the darkness as 2 armored transport trucks screeched to a halt outside the tram station. Vale's team tensed, weapons shifting toward the entrance. "Friendlies?" Rafe called out from behind his cover. Vale didn't answer. She wasn't sure yet. The first truck's rear doors slammed open, and figures in dark grey combat gear poured out. They moved fast, but their formation was disciplined, their weapons steady. Vale recognized the insignia instantly. "Special Operations Unit," she muttered under her breath. "My backup." Relief washed over her team, but it was short-lived. The second truck's passengers emerged in mismatched armor and carrying heavier weapons, syndicate reinforcements. The leader of the black-clad intruders laughed. "Looks like everyone wants a piece of you tonight, Commander." Chaos exploded again. The tram station became a 3-way firefight, Vale's soldiers against the intruders and the syndicate muscle. Muzzle flashes lit the shadows as grenades clattered across the floor, sending fragments and dust into the air. Vale pushed forward through the haze, eyes locked on the leader in the visor. She needed him alive. He was the key to finding out why this joint attack had happened. From the corner of her vision, she spotted Kell crawling toward the side tunnel, trying to slip away in the confusion. Without breaking stride, she hurled a throwing knife that embedded itself into the floor inches from his hand. "Move again, and I'll make sure the next one hits," she warned. Her radio crackled in her ear. "Commander, east flank is holding, but they're pushing hard." Vale's expression didn't waver. "Then push harder," she said, advancing through the chaos. This fight was no longer about survival. It was about ending this war before it spilled beyond the station walls. Smoke thickened the air, stinging eyes and lungs. The tram station floor was littered with shell casings and overturned crates. The deafening exchange of gunfire made it hard to tell who was winning, if anyone was. Vale crouched behind a steel pillar checking her ammo. 2 mags left, not ideal. Through the haze, she spotted the visor-clad leader retreating toward the maintenance tunnel, using the chaos as cover. She keyed her comms. Target moving west tunnel, cut him off. 2 of her operatives broke formation, moving to intercept, but the syndicate reinforcements pressed in, forcing them into cover. The leader slipped further away. Vale cursed under her breath. She didn't have time to play defense. Breaking from cover, she sprinted across open ground, bullets kicking up dust at her heels. She dove behind a fallen support beam just as a syndicate gunman popped into view. One clean shot dropped him before he could react. The visor leader glanced back, just in time to see Vale closing in. He raised his rifle, but she was faster, slamming into him with enough force to send them both to the ground. The rifle clattered away. They grappled, each strike calculated. He was strong, well-trained, but Vale fought like someone who'd survived 100 battles and intended to win 100 more. With a twist of her wrist, she locked his arm and drove him face first into the ground. Her knee pressed into his back, pinning him. "Game's over," she hissed. But instead of struggling, the leader chuckled darkly. "You really think this ends here?" Before she could respond, An explosion rocked the station. The blast came from the east side, where her team was holding the line. Vale's blood ran cold. That was no ordinary grenade. That was a breach charge, and someone had just opened another front in this war. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling as the shockwave rattled the tram station's foundations. The east wall, once fortified, now gaped open, its jagged edges glowing from the heat of the blast. Through the smoke, new figures poured in. These weren't syndicate thugs or black-clad operatives. They were heavily armored mercenaries, their gear marked with no insignia. Hired guns, ghost forces. Vale yanked the visor leader to his feet, keeping a firm grip on his collar. "Who sent them?" she demanded. He only smiled through his bruises. "Someone bigger than both of us." Her earpiece crackled with panic. "Commander, we're being overrun." Vale scanned the chaos. Her team was split, half engaged with the mercenaries, half still locked in firefights with the syndicate. The black-clad unit had scattered, using the confusion to vanish into the shadows. Rafe stumbled out from cover, coughing through the smoke. "Vale, we need to get out of here." She shook her head. "Not without the intel." Her eyes darted to Kell, still restrained but now dangerously close to the breach. He was shouting for the mercenaries, trying to bargain for his freedom. Vale shoved the visor leader toward one of her operatives. "Secure him. No mistakes." Then she sprinted toward Kell, weaving through bursts of gunfire. A mercenary blocked her path. Swinging a combat knife, she sidestepped, hooked his arm, and slammed him into a steel beam. By the time she reached Kell, 2 mercenaries had him by the arms, dragging him toward the breach. Vale drew her sidearm and leveled it at them. "Let him go, or none of you leave breathing." One mercenary grinned. "You're brave, Commander, but you're already too late." Outside the breach, the low hum of rotor blades cut through the night. An extraction chopper. The rotor blades' hum grew into a deafening roar, sending gusts of wind and debris swirling through the tram station. The mercenaries tightened their grip on Kell, dragging him toward the breach. Vale's eyes locked on the chopper, a sleek black bird hovering just beyond the opening. A rope ladder dangled from its side, swaying in the night air. She didn't wait. In one fluid motion, she holstered her sidearm, yanked a flash grenade from her belt, and pulled the pin. "Eyes!" she shouted to her team. The grenade clattered near the breach, exploding in a blinding burst of light and sound. The mercenaries stumbled, disoriented, their grips loosening just enough for Vale to move. She surged forward, striking the first merc in the throat, sending him sprawling. The second swung wildly, but she caught his wrist, twisted hard, and sent his weapon skidding across the floor. Kell fell to the ground, coughing and blinking against the afterimage of the blast. The chopper's side gunner opened fire, spraying the breach with suppressive rounds. Vale grabbed Kell by the restraints and yanked him into cover just as concrete splinters rained down where they'd been standing. "Commander!" Her second-in-command called from across the station. "We need to pull out now." Vale scanned the battlefield. The black-clad operatives had vanished, the syndicate was in retreat, and the mercenaries were regrouping for another push. She hauled Kell to his feet. "We're leaving," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Her team formed a tight perimeter, moving toward the western exit. The chopper swung overhead, but Vale's snipers kept its gunner pinned down, forcing it to pull back. As they disappeared into the tunnel, Vale cast one last look over her shoulder. This wasn't victory. It was a warning.